My name is Audrey Traz. I'm 34 years old. And on my 18th birthday, my parents gave me a suitcase. Not luggage for a trip. Not a graduation gift. A message. My sister Paige got a $200,000 trust fund when she turned 18. I got a gray Samsonite with scratched corners and a broken zipper pull. And 5 words from my father. The world is your trust fund. I laughed. Because I thought it was a joke. Nobody else did. That's when I realized. This wasn't humor. It was a decision. A final one. 16 years later? My sister's trust fund was gone. Every dollar. And my parents needed something from me. Not money. Not forgiveness. Something much more valuable. The problem? By the time they realized it, I had already learned how to live without them. But before I tell you about the phone call, the one that dragged me back into that house after 6 years, you need to understand the kind of family I came from. Because in my family, love wasn't divided equally. It was invested strategically. And my parents believed Paige was the safer investment. We grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Quiet cul-de-sac. White siding. Freshly sealed driveway every spring. My father Gerald treated maintenance like religion. Oil changes every 3,000 miles. Tax folders labeled by year. Spices alphabetized. He believed every problem in life could be solved if you planned carefully enough. My mother Diane was softer. At least on the surface. But underneath, they believed the same thing. Paige needed protecting. I didn't. That was the difference between us. Paige was sensitive. I was capable. And capable children become invisible very quickly. Paige turned 18 first. 2 years before me. My parents threw a party in the backyard. Streamers. Sheet cake. 30 guests. Music playing through cheap speakers on the deck. I remember my father standing at the picnic table, holding an envelope. His voice shaking with pride. This is your safety net, sweetheart. Paige opened it. $200,000. My mother cried immediately. Movie-style crying. Hands over mouth. Perfectly emotional. Paige hugged them both. Everyone applauded. And I stood near the grill, holding a tray of hamburger buns, watching my sister receive a future. 2 years later, my 18th birthday looked different. No guests. No decorations. No music. Just the 4 of us at the kitchen table. Leftover pot roast. Green beans. And silence. My father slid the suitcase toward me. Gray. Hard shell. Scuffed at the corners. Garage sale quality. The world is your trust fund. I looked at my mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at Paige. She stared at her plate. That's when I laughed. Short. Sharp. Because what else are you supposed to do when your parents hand your sister wealth and hand you luggage? But nobody laughed back. And suddenly, I understood. This wasn't symbolic. It was intentional. An hour later, my father found me sitting on the front steps, holding the suitcase handle. Like if I let go, everything would become real. You're upset, he said. Not a question. I looked at him. You gave Paige $200,000. You gave me a suitcase. He sat beside me slowly. Smelled like motor oil and Old Spice. The smell of my entire childhood. Paige is delicate, he said. She needs something underneath her. Then he looked at me. You're like me. You'll land on your feet. I stared at the driveway. That's not the same thing as catching me. He didn't answer. My father never answered the painful ones. Inside, my mother washed dishes loudly enough to avoid the conversation. Later that night, my Aunt Margot stopped me in the laundry room. She smelled like Chardonnay and dryer sheets. "This isn't right," she whispered. "And your mother knows it." "Then why didn't she stop him?" Margot looked toward the kitchen. "Because it's easier to protect the child who falls apart than the one who survives everything." That sentence stayed with me, because it explained my entire life. A week later, I learned Paige had known about the trust fund for 6 months. She and my mother had already planned how to spend part of it. An Audi, designer bags, vacation plans. Meanwhile, everything I owned fit inside one gray suitcase. 3 pairs of jeans, 5 shirts, a winter coat from Goodwill, and a box of ramen noodles. That's what I brought with me to Ohio State. Partial scholarship, 3 jobs, library mornings, coffee shop evenings, tutoring on weekends. Sleep became something I borrowed in small amounts. My father drove me to campus. 90 minutes on I-7. He talked the entire drive about tire pressure, oil changes, battery maintenance. That was how Gerald showed love. Through practical advice. Never emotion. When we reached the dorm, he left the engine running. "You'll do fine, Audrey." "I know." Then he drove away. And I stood there, holding the gray suitcase in one hand and ramen in the other, watching other parents carry mini fridges up the stairs for their kids. Nobody carried anything for me. The first week, nobody called. Not my father. Not my mother. Paige sent one text. "Good luck, sis, white medium star." That was it. No questions. No curiosity. No concern. I called home once. My mother answered. "Oh, Audrey, hold on, Paige wants to tell you about the Audi." 11 minutes. That's how long my sister talked about heated seats and leather interior. She never asked how I was doing. After the call, I slid the gray suitcase under my dorm bed. And something about that image stayed with me. The suitcase fit perfectly beneath the frame. Hidden. Out of sight. Like it belonged underneath things. That suitcase followed me for 16 years. Through college. Law school. 4 apartments. A marriage. I could have replaced it 100 times. I never did. Because I needed to remember what empty felt like. And one day, that empty suitcase would become the most valuable thing my parents ever gave me. Even if they never meant it to, college became survival. Not dramatic survival. Quiet survival. The kind nobody applauds. Alarm at 5:15 every morning. Library shift before class. Coffee shop after class. Tutoring until midnight. Then homework. Then repeat. I learned how to stretch $20 across 6 days. How to eat ramen without hating it. How to study while exhausted enough to feel sick. My GPA stayed at 3.8. Not because I was naturally brilliant. Because failure wasn't affordable. Meanwhile, Paige's life unfolded online like a travel commercial. Cancun. Santorini. Bahamas. Designer bags lined up on hotel beds. Champagne glasses at sunset. Captions full of emojis and phrases like, "Living my best life sparkles." One photo stayed with me. Paige on a yacht in the Bahamas. White bikini. Perfect tan. My parents beside her. Laughing. Relaxed. Happy. Caption: Family vacation with the best parents ever. Red heart. Family vacation. I wasn't there. Wasn't invited. Wasn't even mentioned. That was the part that hurt most. Not exclusion. Erasure. Like they genuinely forgot I existed. The trust fund started shrinking fast. By the time Paige turned 20, $60,000 was gone. Vacations. Luxury shopping. Apartment lease she didn't need. Personal trainer named Marco. $90 an hour. I knew because Aunt Margot told me. Not gossiping. Worried. Your father thinks Paige will settle down, she said one night. Your mother says the money is teaching her independence. Independence. I almost laughed. Because every dollar Paige spent carelessly, I earned manually. Hour by hour. Shift by shift. While she bought wine in Greece, I rationed groceries in Ohio. But something strange happened during those years. The harder life became. The less afraid I felt. Because once you survive long enough without help, you stop expecting rescue. And that changes a person. I got into Ohio State's law program with loans stacked high enough to bury me. Law school wasn't harder academically. It was harder emotionally. Because everyone around me seemed to come from families that showed up. Parents visited campus. Sent care packages. Attended moot court competitions. Mine stayed silent. I invited them to one event during my second year. A mock trial competition. I even mailed printed invitations. Gold envelopes. Embossed lettering. Trying to make it feel important enough for them to care. My father never responded. My mother texted 3 days before. Paige has the flu. I need to stay home. Paige texted me the morning of. Congrats LOL red heart. That was it. Aunt Margot came instead. Purple blazer. Too much perfume. Cried harder than anyone else when I won. Afterward, she hugged me outside the courthouse building. You know something funny, she said. What? You became the kind of woman your parents needed. I didn't understand what she meant then. I would later. My internship changed everything. Small elder law firm in Columbus. 3 attorneys. 1 paralegal. The kind of office that smelled like stale coffee and filing cabinets. Most people thought elder law was boring. Wills. Guardianships. Power of attorney paperwork. But I saw something else. Fear. Families collapsing in slow motion because nobody planned for reality. One case stayed with me. A 78-year-old woman named Ruth. Her son had drained $86,000 from her bank account. Using power of attorney access while she sat in a memory care facility wondering why her cable stopped working. I remember sitting in court. Watching the judge remove him from control of her finances. And suddenly, all I could think about was my own family. Did my parents have a will? A healthcare directive? A power of attorney? My father planned everything. Surely he planned this too. I called my mother that night. Does Dad have an estate plan? Silence. Then immediately. Why would you ask that? Mom, I'm serious. Are you hoping we die soon? Click. 43-second phone call. That's when I understood something. My family treated planning like betrayal. Like preparing for the future somehow invited disaster. Meanwhile, I spent every day helping strangers survive exactly that disaster. I graduated law school in May. Warm Ohio spring. Sunlight everywhere. Derek sat in the 3rd row. History teacher. Crooked smile. Calm in a way I had never experienced before. Aunt Margot sat beside him. 2 seats next to them stayed empty, reserved for my parents. They never came. When my name was called, I crossed the stage, shook the dean's hand, smiled for the photo. And somewhere in the crowd, Derek whistled loud enough to make people turn around. That sound carried me through the rest of the day. Because finally, someone showed up for me. 2 years later, Paige opened a boutique. Paige and Company. Strip mall in Kettering. Funded with the last $60,000 from her trust fund, plus an $80,000 business loan my parents co-signed. She invited me to the grand opening. I declined. I had depositions. My mother called furious. You can't do one thing for your sister? I stared at the phone. You couldn't do one thing for me at graduation. Silence. Then. You didn't need us there. That sentence settled into me slowly. Like poison. Because she believed it. My parents genuinely believed independence meant absence didn't matter. That strong children don't need support. That capable daughters don't feel abandoned. After that, the calls stopped completely. 6 years. No holidays. No birthdays. Nothing. And during those 6 years, my life grew. I made partner track. Derek and I got married at the conservatory downtown. 32 guests. Jazz trio. Buttercream cake. Peaceful. Small. Intentional. We bought a townhouse with a red front door and a backyard barely large enough for tomatoes. And somehow, without noticing, I built the exact kind of stability my parents thought only money could create. Meanwhile, Paige's boutique collapsed after 18 months. Trust fund, gone. Loan payments delinquent. My parents started using retirement savings to cover her debt. Then came the reverse mortgage. Then the credit cards. Then the silence. Until one Tuesday afternoon, my phone lit up. MOM. 6 years. And suddenly, she was calling. I stared at the screen through 4 rings. Then answered. Her voice sounded older. Thinner. Like life had finally started collecting interest. Audrey. Small talk first. Weather. Leaves changing. Meaningless things. Then she finally said it. Your father has Alzheimer's. The room tilted. Not dramatically. Just enough to feel wrong. How long? 8 months. 8 months. 240 days. And nobody told me. We didn't want to worry you. Classic Diane. Turning exclusion into protection. How bad is it? Some days he knows where he is. Some days he thinks he's still working at the plant. Pause. He doesn't always recognize Paige anymore. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Because suddenly, everything became temporary. Even memory. Then finally, after 16 years, my mother said the thing she never thought she'd have to say. We need your help. And in that moment, everything changed. Because the daughter they thought needed nothing had become the only person capable of saving them. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I needed clarity. There's a difference. My mother waited on the phone, breathing softly. Like she already knew. This conversation would cost her something. Finally. Audrey? I looked out the office window. Rain sliding down the glass. People moving below me. Normal life continuing. While mine suddenly tilted backward 16 years. I'll come Saturday, I said. Her exhale was immediate. Relief. Not emotional relief. Practical relief. Like someone finally arriving to handle a problem. Same as always. The drive back to Dayton felt shorter than I remembered. Maybe because I wasn't 18 anymore. Maybe because some roads stop feeling long once you know who you are. The house looked smaller. White siding faded. Driveway cracked near the mailbox. The maple tree in the front yard. Half dead. Time had touched everything here. Including them. My mother opened the door before I knocked. Older. Tired. Not dramatically. Subtly. Like exhaustion had been accumulating quietly for years. Audrey. No hug. We were never a hugging family. Inside. The house smelled different. Less polished. Less controlled. Papers stacked on the dining table. Unopened envelopes near the microwave. Medication bottles lined across the kitchen counter. For the first time in my life. The house looked unplanned. That unsettled me more than anything. My father sat in the recliner near the window. Watching a blank television screen. Remote upside down in his lap. He looked up when I entered. For 1 second? Nothing. No recognition. Just polite confusion. Then suddenly. Audrey girl. The nickname. The one he used when I was little. Something inside me cracked quietly. Because even after everything, part of me still wanted my father to know who I was. I sat beside him. He smelled the same. Motor oil. Peppermints. Old Spice. But weaker now. Fragile in a way I had never imagined possible. How's your car running? He asked. First question. Of course. I almost smiled. Fine, Dad. He nodded slowly. Then whispered. Rotate your tires before winter. And suddenly, I understood something painful. That was love to him. Maintenance. Preparation. Protection through practicality. He never knew another language. My mother touched my arm gently. Can we talk? Translation. Business first. She led me to the dining table. And that's when I saw it. Folders. Bills. Mortgage statements. Final notices. Credit card balances highlighted in yellow marker. The total sat at the top page. $417,000. I stared at the number. Then at her. How? One word. Heavy enough. She sat carefully. Like the chair itself might judge her. Your father refinanced the house twice. 4-page. Of course. The boutique debt. The loan defaults. The failed inventory orders. The business collapse. But this? This was beyond failure. This was destruction. She said she could recover, my mother whispered. She said one more loan would stabilize things. I flipped through the papers. Home equity gone. Retirement nearly drained. Late penalties stacking monthly. Collection notices. Predatory interest rates. My father's signature on everything. Even after diagnosis. That part stopped me. The dates. Some documents were signed after his cognitive decline began. I looked up slowly. When exactly was Dad diagnosed? My mother froze. Tiny hesitation. Tiny mistake. About a year ago. But the refinance papers were signed 9 months ago. Meaning? Someone let a man with Alzheimer's sign financial agreements worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. My stomach tightened. Who arranged these loans? Silence. Then. Paige helped. Of course she did. Because Paige always needed something underneath her. And apparently, that something was now my parents' entire future. Where is she? My mother looked away. That answer told me everything before she spoke. Florida. I laughed once. Short. Sharp. Unbelieving. She left? She needed space. Space. Interesting word. People with money call abandonment space. People without money call it survival. I stood. Walked to the kitchen sink. Needed movement. Needed distance from the numbers on that table. Outside. The maple tree moved slightly in the wind. Dead branches scraping the roof. Like the house itself was trying to warn someone. My mother followed carefully. We didn't know what else to do. I turned toward her slowly. No. You didn't know what else to give her. That landed. Because deep down, she knew it was true. They had spent decades cushioning Paige from consequences. And consequences don't disappear. They compound. Just like debt. Dad signed legal documents while cognitively impaired, I said. That's serious. We weren't trying to hurt anyone. Another classic Diane sentence. As if intention erased damage. As if love cancelled recklessness. I returned to the table. Opened another folder. Bank statements. Luxury condo payments in Miami. Designer purchases. Spa memberships. All tied to Paige's accounts. Paid partially from joint transfers linked to my parents. I closed the folder carefully. Because anger is dangerous in situations like this. Precision matters more. That's what law school taught me. Not emotion. Documentation. Facts. Patterns. I looked at my mother. Has Paige visited since Dad got sick? Silence again. Then quietly. Twice. Twice. 8 months. Twice. And suddenly, I saw the full picture clearly. They didn't call me because they missed me. They called because the stable child finally became necessary. Again. Just like when I was 18. Just like always. Only this time, I wasn't the girl holding a suitcase. I was the attorney reading the paperwork. And that changed the balance entirely. My father wandered into the dining room slowly. Holding an old photograph. Edges bent. Faded colors. He handed it to me. My 18th birthday. Kitchen table. Gray suitcase. My face frozen halfway between confusion and humiliation. He stared at the photo. Long time. Then quietly asked. Why'd we give you that old thing? The room stopped breathing. My mother looked down immediately. Couldn't face it. Couldn't face him. And for the first time in 16 years, I realized something devastating. My father genuinely didn't remember. Not clearly. Not fully. But somewhere inside the damage. Some part of him understood it had been wrong. I looked at the photograph. Then at him. And suddenly, the anger shifted. Not disappeared. Shifted. Because dementia had stripped away the careful logic my father hid behind for decades. And underneath it was regret. Raw. Unprotected. Real. That night, after my father went to bed, my mother finally said the thing she had avoided for years. We treated you differently. No defense. No justification. Just truth. Late. But truth anyway. I didn't answer immediately. Because some apologies arrive after the damage becomes permanent. And permanence changes things. Then she whispered. We thought you'd survive it. I looked at the folders. The debt. The collapsing house. The life built around protecting the wrong person. And I finally understood the irony. They spent 16 years trying to save Paige from struggle, only to create someone completely incapable of surviving reality. While the daughter they abandoned became the only one strong enough to face it. I stayed 3 days. Not because I forgave them. Because the situation needed structure. And structure was the only thing keeping everything from collapsing completely. I converted the dining room into a legal war zone. Folders sorted by category. Debt timelines. Medical records. Loan agreements. Bank transfers. Every document telling the same story. Years of emotional decisions disguised as love. By the second day, I had enough evidence to understand something terrifying. If nothing changed, my parents would lose the house within 8 months. Maybe sooner. The reverse mortgage payments alone were suffocating them. Interest accumulating daily. Creditors circling quietly. Patiently. Like sharks. My mother stood beside me one evening, watching me organize paperwork. "You always know what to do," she whispered. I didn't respond immediately. Because that sentence carried history. Expectation. Dependency. The capable child fixing another disaster. Again. Finally. I had to learn. That was the difference. Nobody taught me stability. I built it myself. Meanwhile, Paige called twice. Didn't ask about Dad first. Asked about the house. Can they refinance again? I stared at the phone in silence. Because even now, even after everything, she still thought there was another safety net underneath her. That's what happens when people are rescued too often. They stop believing consequences are real. On the 4th morning, I scheduled a family meeting. Formal. Intentional. My mother looked nervous immediately. Does it have to be so serious? Yes. Because seriousness was exactly what this family avoided for 20 years. Paige arrived from Florida that afternoon. White SUV rental. Large sunglasses. Designer purse. Still performing wealth. Even while drowning in debt. She hugged my mother dramatically in the driveway. Cried instantly. Perfect tears. Then she walked inside. Saw the paperwork. And her face changed. Not guilt. Calculation. Because Paige always evaluated situations based on survival. Not accountability. "Audrey," she said carefully. Like we were co-workers. Not sisters. I gestured toward the dining chair. Sit. No one argued. That surprised me. Maybe because for the first time, I sounded exactly like Dad used to. Firm. Precise. Controlled. I laid out the numbers slowly. House debt. Medical expenses. Credit obligations. Projected foreclosure timeline. Every sentence stripped another layer from the illusion Paige lived inside. "This can't be right," she whispered finally. But it was. I slid the bank statements across the table. Miami condo payments. Luxury purchases. Transfers from my parents' accounts. Her signature everywhere. Her silence grew heavier with every page. Then finally, "What are you saying?" Simple question. Dangerous question. Because now, we were finally reaching truth. "I'm saying," I replied calmly. "You spent your entire life believing someone else would absorb the consequences for you." My mother flinched slightly. Because she heard herself in that sentence too. Paige crossed her arms. Defensive. "I never asked for any of this." And there it was. The sentence every protected person eventually says. As if benefiting from something absolves responsibility for it. You accepted it, I said. Repeatedly. Silence. My father wandered into the room halfway through the conversation. Holding a coffee mug. Confused. Tired. He looked at all of us around the table. Then at the paperwork. What's going on? Nobody answered immediately. Because how do you explain 20 years of emotional economics to a man losing pieces of his memory daily? He sat slowly beside me. Studied the documents. Then looked at Paige. Did we help you too much? The room froze. Because sometimes? Clarity slips through illness in unexpected ways. Paige started crying immediately. Real crying this time. Not performance. Not manipulation. Fear. Because for the first time in her life, nobody was cushioning the truth. My father looked at me next. Long time. Then quietly asked. Did we not help you enough? That question hit harder than every other moment combined. Because beneath the disease, beneath the years, beneath all his failures, some part of him finally understood the imbalance. Too late. But real. And real matters. Even late. I looked at the gray suitcase sitting beside the wall. I had brought it with me. Still scratched. Still functional. Still mine. 16 years of movement inside one object. You gave me exactly what I needed, I said quietly. Everyone looked confused. Even him. I rested my hand on the suitcase handle. You just didn't mean to. My mother's eyes filled immediately. Because suddenly, she understood. The suitcase forced independence. Resilience. Discipline. Everything Paige never developed because someone always softened impact before it reached her. Pain shaped us differently. And now, those differences had consequences. I opened a folder. Removed 3 documents. Set them on the table. Estate restructuring. Medical power of attorney. Debt containment agreements. Practical solutions. Because unlike the rest of them, I dealt in reality. I'll help stabilize this, I said. My mother exhaled sharply. Relief flooding her face. Then I continued. But there are conditions. The room straightened immediately. First, Paige sells the condo. She opened her mouth. I raised a hand. No negotiation. Silence. Second, Dad signs cognitive evaluations before any future financial decisions. My mother nodded immediately. Already crying. Third, this family stops pretending love means rescuing people from consequences. Nobody moved. Because that sentence cut through all of it. Every year. Every decision. Every failure. Finally, Paige whispered. I don't know how to do life without help. And for the first time, I believed her. Not because she was weak. Because she was never taught. That realization changed something inside me. Not forgiveness. Understanding. And understanding is quieter. Less dramatic. More honest. My father looked toward the suitcase again. Then at me. You landed on your feet. The exact same words from 16 years earlier. But this time, they sounded different. Not dismissive. Amazed. I smiled slightly. Yeah. Pause. I did. That night, I stood alone in the driveway before leaving. The maple tree still half dead. The driveway still cracked. The house still carrying the weight of years. But something had changed. Not them.